Hello and welcome to Her Online Business Podcast, the podcast for aspiring and experienced female web entrepreneurs. I am Adama, your host, and here you will find digital marketing tips for building your online business, interviews from inspiring female entrepreneurs from all over the world, lessons and mistakes from my experience in entrepreneurship, and much more. I am passionate about helping other women live their dream life thanks to an online business that matches their passion and serves their purpose. So let's hang out, have fun, and grow together. Welcome to this new episode of Her Online Business. My guest of the day helps brand new business owners build six-figure businesses by mastering their sales conversations and their mindset. She spent 50 years in the corporate world selling, coaching, and leading sales teams. After deciding that she didn't want to climb the ladder anymore, she realized that there are armies of women in the world doing amazing things, but their businesses continued to struggle. After a ton of networking and connecting, she learned that the sales piece was missing. No one is teaching women how to sell in a genuine way that is about serving and connection. My guest is Ryann Dowdy. Hi, Ryann.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I am fantastic, thanks.
Thanks a lot for joining me today. We are going to learn a lot about selling as entrepreneurs. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. So I actually live in Kansas City, Missouri, which is on the Missouri side of the state line in the US, in the United States. And actually never knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. As we talked about in my bio a little bit, I was a corporate warrior. I traveled the country, I trained sales teams, and I just absolutely love it. And after I had my son, who is who's 3.5 at this point in the game, I realized that I did not think that the corporate world was for me any longer. So jumped into entrepreneurship with both feet and just absolutely love it. I live in the suburbs of Kansas City with my 3 kiddos. I have an almost 1-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and a 15-year-old stepdaughter. And life is just good. We have so much fun serving brand new entrepreneurs and helping women learn that they're in total control of their income. And I bring everything that I learned in the corporate world, the good, the bad, the ugly about sales, because some people don't love it. And I really kind of simplify it, break it down, and help women sell in a way that feels really good to them.
That's great. I really like your career, and the first time we talked together, I was like, wow, I need to have this woman so that she can talk about selling, because as women, I think that sometimes it's the hardest part when you are an entrepreneur is to be able to sell your services and know your worth. So what do you think are the main hurdles that your clients are facing regarding the sales process?
Sure. So I think there's a couple things happening for women in sales. Just as you mentioned, I think one, we don't realize that entrepreneurship is a sales job, right? That you have to sell yourself. It unfortunately is not enough to just be immensely talented at your craft. You then have to be able to go communicate that with other people, right? So I think one, there's just a mismanagement of expectations of entrepreneurship. And then two, I think that so many of us have been sold to in a way that did not feel good to us in the past. And whether that was through, I love to tell the story of like when we were kids, when I grew up, like telemarketers would like call your house in the middle of dinner, right? And try to sell you stuff over the phone. And my dad used to just get so angry when that would happen, right? He'd be like, those damn salespeople. And so many of us, it's like this deeply rooted thing to think that like salespeople are bad, right? Like car salesmen are bad. There's not a movie out there that's like portrays a salesperson in a really positive light. So all of us are like, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. And so I think there's a lot of fear around doing it wrong or making people feel pressured or being spammy or pushy. And so I think that that's a big piece of it. And then the final piece of it too, I think, is there's just a misunderstanding of how to sell and how that selling is about really helping and serving. And, we don't sell to people we don't have permission to. We don't sell to people that have said no, right? Our job as salespeople is not to turn no's into yeses. Our job as salespeople is to help people make decisions and help them get a specific result. And I think there's so much drama in our head about it that we just forget those things.
Yeah. And so you talked about it a little bit, but for you, what is the link between an authentic marketing and being comfortable with selling. So what is maybe the bridge between marketing and sales that people can use in their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually sold marketing for, 15 years. So my entire corporate career was in selling advertising. I sold radio advertising, I sold digital marketing services. And so I love marketing. I'm a huge fan of marketing. But what I learned in selling marketing, that we could, as a marketing agency, drive leads for a business all day long. But if you did not have a process on the other end of that marketing funnel to convert that person into actually paying clients, then all the marketing in the world wasn't going to help you. And so what I like to help my clients do is understand that marketing is the attention grabbing piece, right? It is marketing's jobs to grab people's attention and pull them into our world and tell great stories and connect and all these wonderful things. And sales is where we take them from interested prospect to sold. And I think that there's a common misconception that it's marketing's job. People put so much pressure on marketing to do all of it, right? They want it to get people's attention and to pull them in. And then we want marketing to get them to give us our credit card too. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, that is the sales piece, right? Actually walking somebody through from lead to, actual client. So to me, I think they are two sides of the same coin, and they are both super, super important in a business strategy. But I think there is a misunderstanding, and a lot of people, like I said, put just so much pressure on marketing, and the marketing's got to work. And it's like, yes, of course the marketing has to work, but we have to be able to sell too once marketing draws the people in.
Yes, definitely. And so you are very successful in your career in marketing and sales, and you are leading yourself marketing and sales teams. When you decided to be a business coach and basically an entrepreneur, did you face challenges that you maybe didn't face in your corporate life?
Yes, 1,000%. I faced a lot of challenges. The first challenge that I actually faced was learning to sell myself. It's
Mhm.
very different when you're selling somebody else's services, right? Like I was selling, but they weren't saying no to me, right? They were saying no to the company that I worked for or the idea that my team brought to the table. And so selling yourself is very personal because while yes, I'm selling, a result, but the no's feel more personal when you're an entrepreneur for sure. Do you agree with that? Like in your business?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first part was very much learning to sell myself and being able to detach that the no was still not personal, right? The no was not, no, Ryann, I don't like you. It was no, Ryann, I don't need that result. Don't want that result. I'm not interested in investing in that right now.
Yes.
So that was the first challenge. And then the second challenge I had, funny enough, even after coming from, a sales career and knowing a lot about selling and all of those things, I still tried to follow the game plans that are sold out in entrepreneur world. And what I mean by that is, I decided I want to be a business owner. You start Googling, you start doing research, you start getting served ads, you start getting invited to webinars, you start listening to podcasts. And there's a lot of people promising that it should be easy, right? That you should just be able to, glue a couple of things together and talk to a few people and start, printing money. And I learned that was not true. And that the exact same strategies and tactics that I had used in the corporate world is how I was going to grow my coaching business. But I fumbled around for 6 months trying to do it the way that marketers online are teaching you to do it. Taking out some of the personalization, really focusing on automation, talking about sales funnels. And while those things are super, super powerful tools, and I use them now in my business, but as a brand new entrepreneur, I did not, right? Like those, you don't need a sales funnel when you're brand new to business, right? You need a network of people. You don't need automation. You actually need to go talk to people because you need to, learn their problems and their pain points. And so I think that I was trying to skip to funnels and automation and skip the actual part of the sales process that involves human to human connection and just having conversations. But I just, because I'm stubborn, just kept banging my head against the wall of all this stuff that wasn't working. And I was so frustrated. And then once I realized I've got to go back to my roots of just connecting and serving and selling in just a really genuine way is when my business really started to take off. So I actually had giant hurdles that I had to overcome early on in my journey. Even though I had the skill set, I kept trying to bury it and do what it looked like everybody else was doing. And that did not work well for me.
Yes. I mean, it's so important what you just said is that It's not because you have a marketing or sales background that you are actually, immune and you will not make any mistakes. Because, yeah, as you said, we also look at what everyone else is doing and we think that we can take the shortcut when really you should always focus on the, triple factor effect that we always use in marketing, which is to get people to know, like, and trust you. And to be
Mm-hmm.
able to do that, you have no other choice but to begin, as you said, is first human to human connection.
Yes. Yes.
And so you talked about it a little bit, but what are the main mistakes that you see people making when they are trying to sell their services online?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that I see, and it's actually both end of the spectrums, right? The first thing I see is people aren't selling often enough, right? I actually just had a call with a woman in the UK this morning who she has a huge following on Instagram and she's not making any money. And I'm like, talk to me about that. And it's because she's not selling to her people. She's showing up, she's talking to them, but she's never saying, would you like to jump on a phone and see how I can help you with that? This is a service I provide for my clients. Are you interested in learning more about it? I can help you solve that problem. So the first thing I see is that people aren't making enough offers. They aren't inviting enough people to sales conversations. They're not selling often enough. And then we flip directly to the other side of the spectrum where there are people that are pitching their services to anybody and everybody, even if we don't know if those people are a good fit. And I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think that we see that done, right? And we're like, oh, well, this person just goes into other people's Facebook groups and pitches their services. So this must be the way that it works. And so I see both ends of the spectrum, that we don't sell enough and all we do is sell, and we never really take the time to build relationships and learn about our clients' needs and, get really good at speaking the language of our ideal client. So the two biggest things that I see is not selling enough and then selling when we haven't earned the right. I always tell my students that we do not sell unless we've earned permission to sell, right? We are not selling to anyone who is not actively involved in a sales conversation. And what I mean by that is we don't surprise pitch people. We don't just hey, by the way, let me pitch you this thing. That person has to be a willing participant to be for it to be a real sales conversation. So those are two things that I see happening. And then the third thing I see happening is that most people just aren't talking to enough people. We grossly underestimate the number of people that we need to talk to get clients. Because for many of us that are offering marketing services or, virtual assisting services or bookkeeping or whatever it is that you offer, you only need, a solid 5 to 8 clients to make a really good living if you're charging a decent amount for your services. And so we think, oh, well, I only need, 5 to 8 clients. Then I don't need a huge audience. I don't need to talk to a lot of people. And what winds up happening is we're grossly underestimating that number of people that we need to talk to. And so we're struggling to really get clients because we don't talk to enough people every day. So the way I view it is, like you had talked about the know, like, and trust factor, that takes time. So even if you met a new client today, right now, while you're listening to this podcast, you met a potential new client today, some people don't make decisions quickly. Right? They may love you. They may love everything about you, but they may need a week to think about it, right? They may need time to get their stuff in order, save money to pay you. There's a lot of reasons that they may not buy today. Somebody else you might meet today might love everything that you say and do, but they're not ready to buy, right? They don't need your services just yet. And so we have to kind of balance that idea of I need clients right now to the work that I'm doing now is going to feed me 30 days, 60 days, 90 days down the road. And we are really good, I think, as just a culture, as humans, in focusing on right now, and not thinking about the number of people that we need to talk to build a funnel of people that will become clients, next week, next month, next quarter, next year. And we underestimate that number. And so then we get frustrated because we have 3 or 4 sales conversations. They don't all become yeses. And then we're mad or upset, or we think that our niche is broken, or that our services are broken, or that we're priced too expensively. And we think that it has something to do with us and that we should make changes to our business or our business model, when really it's just because we're not talking to enough people for it to really pan out the way that you want it to or need it to.
Yes, you're so right. Can you give us 3 tips to get better at pitching our services?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, it goes right at the end of mistakes people are making, is talk to as many people as possible, even if they're not your ideal client, even if they can't afford it, even if they're not ready yet, because you will learn so much about your potential customers by just talking to people. And I'll give you a specific example. So I came out of the corporate world, corporate sales, where everything was about, revenue this and projections that, and everything was very corporate and sterile. And what I learned in networking and talking to women in entrepreneurship, those were not the words they were using, right? Like they were not using the word revenue in their business, right? They just needed a client. And so I really like talking to people because, one, you learn the lingo and the language and the words that your ideal clients use to describe their situation. And then two, it's practice talking about your business, right? When you're newer to business, it feels weird to talk about yourself and to promote yourself and sell yourself. And I want you to promote yourself and sell yourself to strangers first, to people who maybe aren't great fits, because I want you to get practice at being good at it down the road. So that first tip kind of buried in there is to make sure that you are talking to as many people as possible to just get practice and really learn the language that your people use. Again, when you're pitching your services, tip number 2 would be your pitch should always be personalized. And so even if you have a package, right, and the package is the same every single time, the pitch should sound different every single time you pitch it, because it should be personalized to the person that you're selling it to and their specific situation. Mm-hmm. As salespeople, we have a tendency to pitch, in generalizations, right? Use your services specifically as marketing, right? Like we want to talk about the power of Instagram as a marketing tool. And that's great and that's good, but your ideal client doesn't care about the power of Instagram as a marketing tool. They care, how does Instagram as a marketing tool make me money, right? And so our pitch always needs to be personalized to the ideal client and their specific services. And then the final piece of pitching your services, and this is such a small tip, but it's so important, is that we need to make sure that we are asking for the sale at the end of our pitch. So often we're like, here's my pitch. It's perfect. It's beautiful. It's magical. It fits all of your criteria. It's in your budget. And then we don't ever say, are you ready to get started? Are you ready to take the next steps? Let's go ahead and get payment and contract and onboarding meetings scheduled. Like we don't ever ask for the sale. We assume that people know that they have to say yes and that they know what the next step is. And then we get frustrated and we're like, well, the client just seemed to love it, but then they never bought. And I'm like, well, did you ask them to buy? And it's like, well, it was implied. I'm like, no. Like no implications here, my friend. Like you have to ask for the sale. You have to ask people to buy, because that's when the objections come up. Right? Because people are like, well, no, there were no objections. And I'm like, well, if there were no objections, it means because you probably didn't ask for the sale. Because if you didn't get the sale and there were no objections, you didn't ask. Because until you say, are you ready to get started? That's when the objections will come up, right? When people will say, oh, I need to think about it, or I can't afford it, or, I'm not sure, or I'm interviewing some other marketers, right? But we have to ask first to be able to handle the objections and win the business.
You're so right. I hope that you listen to Ryann and her speeches, because I see so many people who don't do that, and I was also guilty of it. So I hope that you start doing this right now for your business.
Yes.
And so can you tell us maybe in which state or which situation were your clients when they come to you for your services?
Yeah. So I work with brand new entrepreneurs. So they are typically in their first 2 years in business, typically less than $50,000 in revenue. So the majority of them either have never had a client ever before, or they have had a few clients, but have struggled to bring clients on consistently. So they'll get a client and then they won't sign another client for 3 or 4 months. Or they'll get a client and it'll just be a project, and they struggle with like creating recurring revenue or like retainer-based clients in their business. So that is typically where my people are. So like I said, either have never had a client before, have no idea how to even start, or have had a couple of clients, but they don't have a consistent process in place to bring clients on consistently and hit their income goals in their business.
Okay. And so how do you help them with your services and your type of coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I coach specifically is the sales process. I coach sales conversations, how to go out into the world, start conversations with strangers, ask good questions, navigate the discovery call, navigate handling objections, navigate asking for the sale, navigate all of those things. And so my coaching is a little different than some people. Is yes, we talk some tactic and some strategy, but for me, it's really about that sales conversation and human to human connection, and going out there and dealing with what feels really awkward to a lot of people, and just striking up conversations with strangers and building a network of people. So that is really specifically what I teach in my coaching program, is learning to have those conversations and really building those strong sales foundations and fundamentals in your business. Because once you master those fundamentals, then we can definitely unleash the marketing dogs and unleash the automation and the selling one to many and all of the different fun things. But we have to get really good at the basics, which is actually like having a repeatable process in your business to go out, meet new people, start conversations with them, pull them into your sales process, and then convert them into clients. So that is really kind of my wheelhouse specifically.
Okay, well, that's so, so great. I mean, it is so needed. And I know that a lot of us have this fear of selling and we don't know our worth and we don't know if people are going to buy. But the thing is that you have to put yourself out there. So
Yes.
I want actually to ask you also, do you see your clients struggling with knowing their worth and what are their services worth? Because some people get clients, but they
Mm-hmm.
still don't know how to make both ends meet because they are not charging enough. So do you see that?
Yes.
And how do you help your clients overcome this kind of money mindset barrier?
Sure, absolutely. Um, I agree with you. And I kind of sit on both sides of the fence on like the charge your worth argument. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is I definitely think we should be charging a premium for our service, but I also think that you have to feel confident in your pricing to be able to sell. So I tell my students to start with a price that feels good to you and then limit it, right? So even if your average social media manager is getting paid $1,000 a month, but for you, $450 a month feels good. And I'm just throwing out numbers as examples. But for you, I say, okay, then go get a client at $450 a month and then raise your rate. And then go get a client at $600 a month and then raise your rates. And so I have them work up to the dollar amount they want to be charging, because what I find is sometimes people are trying to charge what they're worth. I'm using air quotes right now, but that doesn't feel in alignment with where they feel they're at in their business journey. And so what I really coach them through is it just takes one. Right? Because what I think you're implying is a lot of us will go out and take all clients on at $450 and never raise our rates to get to that $1,000 mark or wherever it is you're trying to go. So we talk about like, go get a client at that dollar amount and then raise your rate, and get a client at that dollar amount and then raise your rate, and then just keep going until you feel like you've got a good pricing that you feel really, really, really good at. So that's kind of always my advice on pricing. But I also coach very much to the idea of selling based on results, or what they call like value-based pricing. So what I see a lot, especially in marketing, is the idea of like charging an hourly rate, like, because that's what agencies do, right? It's like, oh, well, it's, $250 an hour is the agency rate. If I were to go hire an agency to do this work for me instead of a freelancer, I would have to pay $250 an hour. So what's your hourly rate? And I think our clients have forced us into that, right? And so then we think, oh, well, my hourly rate is X, and we get married to that hourly rate. And then we're essentially trading time for money, which never bodes well for anyone. So I always tell my students and clients to focus on the result, not the time that it takes, right? Because it's naturally going to take you less time as an expert to accomplish something than it would be if I tried to bumble through it myself as a non-expert, right? So it's not apples to apples as far as time, but it's as far as what is the result. If you do a great job in your marketing and you're driving an extra 100 leads into somebody's business and they close 20% of those leads, I'm bad at math, but that's 20 new clients, right? If that person's business charges $1,000 per client, you just gave them a $20,000 increase in revenue, which is a huge number compared to charging $150 an hour for your services. So I always want my students really focused on the idea of the result. What is the result that your clients get by working with you? And sometimes it's not always money, right? I talk a lot about the idea of like mental headspace. I think of things that I don't like to do in my business. And the headspace of not having to stress out about it, of knowing it's just handled. Like I think of finance in particular. It's one of the first things I outsourced was my bookkeeping. But not having that like mental thing in the back of my head. It's like, oh, I should really do my bookkeeping. I should really finally set up QuickBooks. I should really take a look at that. And it just drove me crazy every day because I didn't want to do it. But so it was taking up a lot of mental headspace in addition to the time and effort it would take me to actually do the work myself. So that's kind of my philosophy on pricing is, one, you have to be confident. So start where you feel comfortable and raise your rates. And then two, make sure you are thinking about the work that you do in terms of the results, not the amount of time it takes you to do something.
Yes, so true. And the fact that you said that people should not charge hourly and charge based on the value we are offering. That's another topic that is so important, but I just hope that people now understand the difference and understand why it is so important just for your own balance and financial balance to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yes.
You made me think of another question. You made me think of another question when you talked about a mind space and knowing that someone else can do the work that you don't want to do, or you know that it's going to take a long time for you to do it and to do it well. And so for you, it's bookkeeping. So most of us as entrepreneurs, we don't like bookkeeping and we try to outsource that as soon as we can. Do you sometimes recommend entrepreneurs to outsource the sales process if they feel more comfortable about creating the services and creating the offer? Or is it better maybe at the beginning to do the sales process yourself, and once you grow, then you outsource it maybe to a salesperson?
So I think outsourcing is awesome. And I do think that hiring a salesperson for your business is a great strategy in a long term down the road. I think early on in your business, it's really, really important to learn how to sell your services, because how are you going to train a salesperson to sell your services if you don't know how to sell your services? How are you going to tell a salesperson to go out and sell what it is you do when you don't understand your ideal client, or you don't understand their pain points, or you don't understand why they would buy? So for me, I see a lot of people do try to outsource this because they don't like doing it, but then you're at the mercy of that person. Yeah. And as a business owner, personally, I don't ever want to be at the mercy of someone else, meaning I need that person to, figure something out for me for my business to be successful. So for me, when it comes to like sales and marketing and pricing and packaging and strategy, like I think as business owners, we need to learn those things first and then outsource them, because how do you manage a salesperson if you don't know what they should be doing, right? Like how you sell marketing services, right? Like if I didn't know what kind of marketing I should be doing, or where my ideal client was hanging out, or, the pain points of why they buy, I couldn't effectively help you do your job, much less than hold you to an expectation of what you should be able to deliver. So for me, we need to have really clear understanding of what's going on in our business before we can outsource it. And I do still, even with my bookkeeper, even though I have no desire to do it, we sit down quarterly and we look at my books so I understand them and I know what's going on, and I take her guidance to do other things. So I don't think it's ever really a smart decision to be totally hands off in our business. But I do think that outsourcing is super, super powerful once you know how to do it and you have a good understanding of it. Then it's time to outsource it for sure.
Yes. And so where can people find you and your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite place to hang out is in my Facebook group. It's called Sales Skills for Women in Business. It is just an awesome, amazing group of women who are great at networking and connecting and are all learning to sell in a way that feels good to them. If you prefer Instagram, we are late to the Instagram party, but we do hang out on Instagram. We are at Uncensored Sales. And then my website is uncensoredconsulting.com. You can learn a little bit more about my background and my services there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryann. We've learned a lot today, and it is a topic that is very key for every aspiring and even experienced entrepreneurs. So thanks a lot for being here today. I don't know if you had maybe one last word, maybe to encourage people who still are on the fence about learning how to sell their services online.
So my last piece of advice that I would leave you with is the idea of it's okay to do it wrong. And what I mean by that is when you learn something new, you will not be perfect at it the first time around. And that's anything. But I see this happens a lot to women who are like, well, I had a couple of discovery calls and nobody bought, so I must be doing something wrong. Or, I'm out there avidly networking, but I'm not booking any sales calls. I must be doing it wrong. And I want that to be okay. Like, it's okay to do it wrong. Like, you're going to do it wrong before you learn how to do it. I always use the example of like, I have a baby who is learning to walk right now. And, she's not mad when she falls down. Like, she's not angry about it. Like, she just falls down. That's part of learning to walk, right? Like, it's just what it is. She's not like, oh, well, maybe I'm just not a good walker because I've tried this 8 times today and wasn't successful, right? Like girlfriend just gets up and keeps trying to learn how to walk. And so I want you guys to think about that in your business. Like you are learning an entirely new skill. Even think about it when you were like a little baby digital marketer and you didn't know anything about digital marketing, right? You said and did things that probably weren't super successful the first time around, right? You probably put out content that people didn't resonate with, or, whatever. So I want you to just really think about that. Like it is okay to do it wrong. And quite frankly, if you're not doing it wrong, it means you're not doing it enough. If you're not making mistakes, if you're not hearing no, it means that you're probably not putting yourself out there enough.
Yes. I mean, that's a beautiful message. Just allow yourself to do mistakes. That's so important.
Yeah. And that's in everything. I mean, I'm sure you see this too. Like it's even in client work, people are all like, oh, I'm terrified that I'm going to make a mistake. I'm like, dude, you are going to make a mistake. You are a human being. Like that is what human beings do. Nobody hired a robot to do their marketing. They hired you. So it's okay. And just really like, instead of being like, oh my God, I hope I don't make a mistake. It's like, hey, I know I'm going to make mistakes because I'm a human, but I'm going to get better every time.
Thanks for this beautiful last word, Ryann. It was a pleasure having you here in this podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the invitation, and I sincerely appreciate being here.
You're welcome. Have a nice one. That's already the end of the episode. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Google Play, share this episode with your friends, and comment to let me know that you like this kind of subject. Also, if you want to hang out with me, follow me on Instagram at ah.diallo, where I share more of my entrepreneurial journey and my services. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get notified when a new episode comes out. Until then, I wish you a nice day and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.